All right, we're 10:59. I think that's close enough. So thanks for joining. Data integration. So I'm presuming because you're in this room that you have a very specific interest in data integration, and you recognize that you want to move some processing into Hadoop and get it out of some places that it is otherwise. So with that premise, let me ask for a show of hands. You found data integration, data preparation, processing expensive, and that's your primary reason for looking at Hadoop for data integration. Okay, that's a couple. Data integration, you require, just because you want to do analytics in Hadoop, that you also want the data integration co-located. Is that your, okay. Others is just it's Hadoop, and you kind of like looking to put anything else that you can into Hadoop, and that's kind of more of your interest. All right, usually get a hand or two for that one. Any other reasons you're looking at data integration inside of Hadoop? Somebody who's brave want to suggest a reason? Okay. You know, it's interesting as we talk about the evolution of the space and scale out. Oh, scale out, that was the other reason. Because you have such a large-scale data integration project ahead of you, you assume that Hadoop is the best way to get that type of scale out for your data integration process. Is that the primary reason? Okay. So all of these, just a little bit of coverage. The final one would be unstructured information. You're trying to do something, you know, you've done all the structured stuff that you know how to do and the traditional tools, and now you actually have an unstructured data integration project ahead of you, and you're looking at this for unstructured. Can I ask what kind of unstructured? Because everybody means something different with unstructured a little bit. What's the intent there? Customer information without structure. Yeah, yeah, no, it's a good use case, and we see that maybe through social media channels.
Definitely social media, emails, anything like that.
Email. Okay. Yeah. So almost a content analytics type use case, which in some ways looks a little bit like data integration as well. Yeah. Yeah. You know, I just arrived. I was busy the last 2 days. I arrived this morning, and I went into the conference for a little while, and I was actually watching to see which of the speakers started talking about data integration right away. But you know, it has quickly become one of the primary use cases for Hadoop. And I think part of the reason is because just about any analytics project you have requires data integration of some sort. Is the data fit for purpose? You have all of these data sources across your organization, and now with big data, you have more of them. They're more varied, larger volumes, and now the complexities that you had with your small data projects, right, have kind of expanded into big data projects. Let me ask you a question. During the conference, have they switched from big data to any data yet? Or primarily big data, or just basically Hadoop? Hadoop, all right. Yeah, you know, because we really are looking, because like unstructured, semi-structured, traditionally structured, again, if we're looking at taking data integration processes out of an expensive appliance where we've done ELT workload and move it into something that's more cost-effective, all of these reasons are really key reasons that we see a lot of customers going towards looking at Hadoop, right? It is tremendous performance scale out, more scale out than performance today. But it's got then all of the requirements for any of these types of things that we've done with data over the years, like transforming, cleansing, making it fit for purpose for business purpose, reconciling reference data values across heterogeneous data sets. All of that still needs to be done. And so any analytic product, and this isn't just a project, this isn't just really a Hadoop metric, it's a metric across any type of data warehouse project you've done over the years. 80% of the effort is getting data fit for purpose. It's the data preparation. It's all the things you need to do to make sure that you've got it structured and it's in place and it's appropriate for use. You know, while 2 years ago, everybody who was talking Hadoop was talking unstructured information and all of these videos and social and media, really what we've recognized, the industry as a whole, is that there's tremendous value in Hadoop for structured information, semi-structured information, as well as some of the unstructured use cases, but they're not the predominant ones yet, right? A lot of the predominant ones are still structured, and the reason because we all understand that space, right? For years and years and years, hundreds of thousands of people working on structured information, facing challenges, either performance, scale out, complexity, diversity, disparate data sources. And so, you know, that's the domain that many of us in IT know and understand and recognize specific opportunities within Hadoop for. And so we all go into the space with open eyes. This is a reference from an Intel quote in one of their white papers about Hadoop. And basically what they said is, yeah, I mean, the same types of paradigms that we see, 80% of the data going, or effort going into data to an analytics project is data integration. So to be useful, meaning accuracy of data should never be in question, right? If I'm going to build a business decision on a piece of data that comes out of my Hadoop platform, I need to understand how that decision was made, and I need to understand what this data is useful for. And what we quickly start getting into is the topic of governance, right? How do I understand the usefulness of data? And again, this is the same type of questions that we would have asked in traditional sources for a long time. And what we want to do is bring all of this kind of best practice and expertise that we've built around information and processing into the Hadoop environment. And so there's inhibitors for good data integration. Inhibitors typically are, a couple of them I've mentioned already, heterogeneity of data sources. Missing or bad requirements. Does anybody ever get an incomplete spec in their life? Right, all right. Diverse formats, and diversity of format, like diversity of data store type, is changing at a rapid pace, right? Things like JSON and Avro and RC2 and others, right? These things didn't exist several years ago, and now they're getting pervasively adopted because they have flexibility, that there's some new tools that are being built around them, and if your company plans to go that route now, all of a sudden you have a new data source type or diverse format type. Lack of understanding, who is the business user, subject matter expertise? Are they even available for me on my project? And so what can I learn out of the data? Data issues themselves, the data was collected at the edge of the organization where I have little control, and so it's of suspect quality. And again, going back to the social media case, that's one particular example where you can't even control the type of data quality you get, and let alone, what kind of decision can you base on that if you don't control the quality of the information coming in. And so data issues, and they're varied, right? Reference data values are bad. And I've got whole dimensions of my data warehouse that aren't getting reported on correctly. Optimizing performance. And again, I'll assume that most folks in the room have some level of data integration background. But how many people have spent a good portion of any particular data integration project struggling just to get performance better? Okay, a few. Yeah, almost like a dozen almost at that point. Yep. And actually, you can, depending on what types of tools you're using, sink quite a bit of time into that. And then just complexity. Again, if I've got 20 different data sources, some from the mainframe, some from DBMS, some that are coming in through XML or JSON or other formats like that, of course, all of these things raise the level of complexity. And so data integration is a challenge, and it's a very large challenge. And again, 80% of any analytics project is going to be caught up in this challenge. So isn't there any good news? Yes, I have good news for you today. That's what you came to a conference for, is good news. Most Hadoop initiatives will end up achieving garbage in, garbage out faster against larger data volumes at much lower cost than without Hadoop, right? So if we just don't change the dimension of anything else, and we just do the traditional things that we've always done, we could do more of it faster, and we'll get to end of job quicker, but not necessarily any better. And so we want to obviously balance this equation. How do you get more confidence out of more data, not less confidence out of more data? So without big data integration, that'll be the topic of the rest of the session. You won't have consumable data, and really we want consumable data. I don't know if you've seen this picture before, but if you go to any nice IBM presentation these days on big data, we'll talk about the data swamp and the data lake, and how do you get from the heterogeneity of bad data quality water into something that looks like it just came out of a bottle. Right? So we want this sort of data water. Okay. So I'm going to talk about 5 best practices for big data integration. These are things that I can say, with all frankness, is proven to work. We've worked with myriad of customers over the years. I'll talk about big data projects that we've done before Hadoop ever came on the scene, and some big data projects that we've done after with customers who are embracing Hadoop. In my background, I've been with, actually this, almost today is my 15-year anniversary with the data stage technology, working specifically in the ETL space. Prior to that, I was doing mainframe data integration projects, using things like COBOL and EasyTreeve and QuickJob, if you're familiar with any of those technologies. So, I've been in this data integration game for a while as a consultant, as a support engineer, and over the past 5 years as a product manager. And so probably in this role, I get more exposure to a diverse use case set than I did in any of my former roles, since they were typically focused on one customer at a time. So no hand coding anywhere for any purpose. One data integration and governance platform for the enterprise. And we'll talk about why all of these things are important. Massively scalable data integration wherever it needs to be run. And there are a variety of places where you can run scalable data integration. And what our standpoint is exploit them all. If it's database, if it's integration platform, if it's Hadoop, we should be able to exploit them all. World-class data governance across the enterprise. This gets into, can I understand how the data is being used, whether or not it's being used appropriately? And again, if you're in a financial or healthcare industry, these things aren't like nice to haves. Often these are the types of things that people go to jail for if it's not like know how your data is being used to service your customer space. And so there are regulatory requirements that interject with some of these. And then robust administration operations control across the enterprise. Again, 2 years ago, nobody was concerned about if I built a Mapreduce job, how it was going to get deployed into production, who were the operations people who were going to manage it. If it ever goes down, how do I do support calls in the middle of the night on a weekend, right? All of those sorts of things are still now mainstays for us as we make things ready for production. Okay, so best practice number 1. Does anybody recognize the question mark? All right, Doctor Who fan? Also, yeah. All right, so what does this mean? No hand coding for any aspect of big data integration. So it is achievable to do very complex data transformation using best-of-breed tooling. And I'll say, IBM has some, other competitors, some who are here, also have good tooling to represent complex data integration patterns. One of the benefits of that, of course, is going to be productivity, and we'll talk a little bit about productivity now, as well as the ability for me to use the metadata. As the tool is assembling these components of logic, we generate metadata automatically. And so what I start to get is insight and reuse that I can't get through traditional hand coding methods. Data access and movement across the enterprise. Again, just because I adopt, let me start that sentence over. When Hadoop first came out and we were looking at, how do we interact with Hadoop, one of the questions we first asked is, isn't this just n+1? All the other things that we did for any other data source across the enterprise, I now have to do with this large scalable platform called Hadoop. Right? And so the access patterns, connectivity, native ability to read and write at scale, and move data in and out of that environment at scale with any other environment at scale. And so again, data access and movement across the enterprise. Data integration logic, we've already touched on. Assembling data integration jobs from logic to objects. Reusability. If I build something one time, how do I promote the reuse? And one of the topics that we've been talking about for a year now is this, along with data lake, is data refinery. If I build a component in integration logic, how do I make that available for other users to take? And so this reuse of a logic object or a refinery service, if you will, definitely key to getting broad scale integration where there's no hand coding, right? Otherwise, you've got bespoke people building the same things multiple times in different ways without the same results. Yep. Assembling larger workflows. Now I want to pull all of these things together. And if I'm pulling it together from logic that I'm running in a warehouse versus logic that I'm running in an integration platform versus logic I'm running inside of Hadoop, all of those patterns are meaningful and need to be orchestrated together. One of the first use cases a retailer, a .com retailer came to us with was, I've got this stuff in my enterprise data warehouse. I've got some data that's in Hadoop, that's the only place it lives, and I need my customer, my product reference tables in Hadoop. And so how do I move that in there, run my algorithms that I've built in Mapreduce, and then push the workload back into the enterprise data warehouse because that's how it gets consumed today. And so again, all of these things need to be orchestrated across the board. And so assembling larger workflows could be putting these components together that do transformation, or it could be viewed larger as some things that run here, some things that run here, and all of them need to be orchestrated together. Data governance I've mentioned, and we'll talk about a little bit more. And I'll skip operational management for now because we've got another topic on that. So hand coding, this was a study that we did a long time ago. It's proved itself out so many times over the years that if I set out to do hand coding versus using a data integration tool, there's a huge gap in the effort. Actually, recently we were working with a government customer. They were looking at hand coding. They had, it was a team of a dozen developers working for 30 days, did 10% of the requirements. We brought our tools in. Within 2 days, we had 80% of the requirements done. Just huge, huge change of if I have to start from scratch every time with hand coding versus using built-for-purpose tooling, I get just a tremendous acceleration out of the tooling. And so this isn't uncommon. Almost a 90% saving in time to deliver project value. And so again, if we're just talking about how can I get value to the business quicker, built-for-purpose tooling always trumps, again, hand coding. And a lot of the reason is because it knows how to deal with complexity, right? It's built to deal with complexity. It's built to deal with the connectivity endpoints that data integration requires. It knows how to do that natively and at scale. And so a lot of the things that you might want to build, and if you're spending time iterating over hand coding to get better performance, again, that's part and parcel of the data integration platform. And a lot of that hand coding time is just saved immediately by moving to a data integration technology. So no hand coding anywhere. Some of the benefits we already started to talk about now: lower costs, reduces labor costs by over 90%. I have talked with some customers. They are happy to throw more Java developers at a problem. And sometimes that's the side of the equation that's easier for them to control, right? And dime a dozen of a developer, and I could put them on this problem. And I actually have capital budget issues, and so if I have to balance one versus the other, it's an easier. But overall, if you look at the problem space as a whole, data integration tooling, because of the time to value, being able to run multiple projects at the same time, using the same types of resources, always quicker. One set of skills. If you look at the challenges of doing traditional enterprise data warehouse, let's say writing stored procedures inside of Oracle, and not that I'm picking on Oracle, but that takes a particular skill set. And then if I'm looking at developing something natively in Hadoop using Mapreduce, that's a very, very different skill set versus a data integration platform would be a very, very different skill set. And so if I could look at those resources across the board and say one type of learning actually gets me value for deployment of data integration logic across any of those mediums, so I can get scale, data locality of processing, I get that tremendous benefit. Higher quality data, depending on the data integration platform you're working with, they've had data profiling tools, data cleansing tools available to them. And so you can immediately do your data profiling, learn the things that were the challenges, right? We don't know what this data looks like. Are there nulls? Are there reference values always matched? Right? These are the types of things later on in a project that always come to bite you. So interjection of data profiling exercises early in the process is always helpful. And again, a good part of any data integration platform you'd want to qualify for use for your organization. Effective data governance. Again, I was just debating on time. Let me skip this for now. We have a topic on data governance. But this is the point that it falls out of the data integration platform. Because I built visually through components that are understood as far as the types of metadata they contribute. Right? If I have a database stage, it contributes connectivity information to a database, the schema, the tables, the columns. Right? All of those things fall out, actually, of the process of building using the tooling, so I can understand what data is being used, how it's being transformed. And again, it benefits other efforts you might have to do to actually build governance into a solution that was hand-coded solution. Right? You actually then wind up building this stuff, too. I didn't say this at the beginning, but I'm always open to take questions as I'm going through. You probably got the feeling by now I will just talk indefinitely. But if there is a question, feel free to raise a hand. I'll scan. Okay. Best practice 2. So we talked about no hand coding. Let's move on to one data integration platform for the enterprise. Again, there is, again, a myriad of data sources. Does anybody believe in the next 5 years that all of your analytics will run exclusively on Hadoop? That's ambitious. Actually, I would love to talk to you guys afterwards. But that's not, obviously, we have, 70 people in here now, right? I mean, that's a small percentage, right? For some period of time to come, and maybe 10 years, there'd be more hands that come up. But for some period of time, there's going to be data integration requirements across a broad set of databases. And then if I interject, like if I have Oracle or DB2 or a transactional database as a source, all of those things will, I'll put a 15-year time limit before I think Hadoop can ever do the level of transaction granularity support that is required for those types of databases. And so for some period of time to come, files, XML, JSON documents, all these things, right? Data integration is here to stay. The complexity is going to be around for a long time. It's hard to tear down systems. And so when we think about how can I promote enterprise-level tooling, again, one skill set across the bunch, this is a best practice. And what it does, actually, it lends for agility. Yeah, question?
Yeah, I work for a large multinational, many billion-dollar corporation, and we've got multiple data governance platforms. Can you explain
Yeah, so the question was, if we have multiple data governance platforms, how do we interact or work with them? So a couple of things. The information server, which is the technology I work with, we have ability to share metadata. So there's import and export methodologies. And so let's say you have a COBOL program, and it's got a vSAM file, and it's moving to load into DB2Z. One of the things you could do is actually just say, hey, information server, there's this program called ABC, moves data from here to here, and basically just push that information into us very easily. If you've got other data governance projects that can accept something as simple as this is the source, this is the program, this is the target, or this is the source, these are all the attributes, these are all the transformations that happen, and this is the target. We can basically push that information out to those other data governance programs as well. Now, I wasn't sure if you were in finance, because some of the governance questions come up for governance, risk, and compliance, which kind of gets to portfolio management, and it's a very different look at how do I manage the risk of my organization. So I wasn't sure if you meant that type of stuff or just more lineage, impact analysis. Okay. And did you have a follow-up point there, too? Okay. Some of the things that we do within our information server platform is pictorials of how the data is moving through the various programs to the different data sources and targets. We have customers who basically are running tens of thousands of jobs a day, where we represent those graphs for them pictorially. They get to do tracing of information through, back and forth. And it's the same type of tooling now that we've extended to work also with Hadoop, right? Because we use the same tooling, we get the same metadata benefits for governance objectives that we do on our traditional integration platform stuff. Support a variety of data integration platforms. A lot of times when we're talking about Hadoop as a data integration engine, it's traditionally seen as batch, bulk, large scale. But that's not the only type of data integration there is. Of course, there's data replication, which is a key requirement for disaster recovery, high availability, but also for real-time analytics, right? How can I get data very quickly? And can I get data out of my DB2 transactional database into Hadoop so it's available within sub-seconds, right? And so another one it's really breathed new life into it. And the reason I think that's changed again is because there's so many new data sources coming of age. Again, spin the clock back 6 years. There was Oracle, Teradata, DB2, Netezza, one or two others. That was all we were really talking about most of the time. Now there's just so many others. And so data virtualization. How can I, when data's here and here and here, bring them all together in a meaningful way, exploit the native parallel capabilities of any of those platforms where they exist in order to bring together a data integrated object, right? Some data that's collected from across the board. And so data virtualization, another pattern that's, again, reemerged, something IBM actually wound up inventing about a dozen years ago, but went quiet for a long time because of network bandwidth and, locality of processing. Integration was easier to do, and so, breathed new life into it. The SOA enablement. I want to build something that runs natively in Hadoop, pulls together gigabytes, terabytes, petabytes of information, and allows somebody to trigger that running and producing a result that goes back into a web service, right? And this is another type of data integration. It could be also considered application integration. Here's where those two areas start to merge a little bit. But definitely, how do I make something web service enabled? And again, a lot of capabilities which exist in data integration platforms for doing this. And so, just don't think when I land it someplace, that's the objective of integration. Sometimes it's actually to deliver it through a web service to a portal, et cetera. Yes, all of them supporting governance. One pattern that we've been promoting quite a bit, I'm going to cough, is a self-service data integration. So information server includes this technology called DataClick. Thin client, so basically you can give it to any user without installing anything on their desktop, and it knows about all of the metadata that you wanted to import. So if you've got your Oracle system, your Teradata system, your Netezza system, all of that metadata can be available. And then what you can do is authorize somebody to go in here and say, yeah, that particular table is what I need in my Hadoop HDFS file system. And oh, by the way, register that into HCatalog so I can query it through a SQL interface layer as well. And DataClick, excuse me. DataClick ships with our Big Insights distribution from IBM. And so part and parcel of that distribution now is this technology to make getting data into and out of Hadoop very, very easy. Again, thin client And so if you think about all of the other users in the organization who you would like to supply data into Hadoop, there's a very effective means to enable them to, without knowing anything about Scoop, Mapreduce, or HDFS or HBase or any of these topics, push this out to them, give them a very easy way to move data. I think I'm done. All right. Into Hadoop. So it's data collect. Also ships as part of our data integration platform. So if you have that requirement for any data movement, could be Hadoop related or non-Hadoop related. Again, we want to actually have one type of tooling that can service the enterprise at large, at scale, not something bespoke that was only built specifically for my enterprise data warehouse or specifically for my Hadoop distribution. Again, this gets you skill sets across the board and makes this one particularly very easy. And so, again, as you're looking at different types of integration patterns, this self-service data integration pattern is a new emerging one, definitely one to keep in mind, particularly as the skill sets for Hadoop aren't as pervasive as the skill sets are for other SQL databases. I'll tout our IBM technology a bit. So our information server data integration platform, we've done benchmarking now at 15 terabytes per hour of data movement into and out of Hadoop clusters. Basically at that rate, because we have a massively scalable engine, we could have pushed it further. We were just saturating the disk underneath HDFS when we hit that particular bandwidth for the Hadoop machines that we had available to us. So this is again, massively scalable technology in information server. Apart from Hadoop, and we'll talk about some of those use cases. Streaming parallelization techniques. Just because something runs inside of Hadoop doesn't mean it's actually always performant. It gets scalable, but it doesn't necessarily get really performant. Now, you could talk about, well, performance is a subject of data partitioning, and Hadoop, we get massive data partitioning. Yes, by all means. But it's not the only performance technique. And actually, some of the better ones are pipelining of data. Because what pipelining of data saves you is I/O cost. Right, and I/O cost tends to be the most expensive thing to do. Drop to disk, write after a reduce, read it again, map, reduce, et cetera. And so streaming parallelization techniques, part and parcel of our information server technology to stream data. And again, easy to extend using the same tools into the Hadoop environment. For sake of time, I'm going to skip through, but this was our data replication. Can I get data into Hadoop and land it in sub-seconds? So it's available for real-time reporting within the Hadoop analytic environment. Yep. So best practice 3, massively scalable data integration. So I was talking about outside of Hadoop, I want massively scalable. Between different environments, I want it massively scalable. And on a data integration platform. Not all data will always go to Hadoop. I think, and to the folks in the back who had raised their hands before, within 2 years, I think huge amounts of data in our enterprises will be moving to Hadoop over the next several years. But there's so many applications and dependencies and report constructs and subject matter things that we've built over the years. Not everything will go into Hadoop tomorrow, right? And so for some time to come, this case number 3 of how can I stream data at scale in between different environments, as well as then push as much as I can into Hadoop at scale. So design once, scale anywhere. I think that's a good mantra to have as you're exploring data integration patterns. I want to design it once, scale it anywhere.
Question.
Yeah, yeah.
So, source systems users there tend to change data models when they pull out something that has a schema. Is there a way to detect if someone has made a change and alert your information server admin to let downstream people know that there's been a change?
Yeah, so the question was, can we look at the metadata in a source system and recognize that there was a delta? Yeah, this actually was a technology we call Metadata Asset Manager. We built that about 3 years ago. And what it can do is command line import of new metadata, and we'll actually recognize those changes that are available and then be able to push those out to your metadata administrator so he can share them with others. And so, yeah. And that's a key requirement. Change to data model is a key one. People familiar with the topic schema on read? Okay, yeah. So this was being promoted for a long time. It's got some benefits, of course, but metadata changes. So how do I isolate myself from metadata changes? As long as the required elements, let's say there's 10 things in a JSON doc, I could query that JSON doc and get the things I need. If somebody adds an 11th or adds a 12th, it doesn't necessarily impact me, right? That's where schema on read is a value. But it's not pervasively a value, and it has computational costs every time I hit that thing. And so I appreciate your question because I think people, well, about a year and a half ago, a lot of people coming into Hadoop large enterprise bank. One part was talking about laying off all their data architects because they were moving to Hadoop now, right? I think that was a naive thought because they had this schema on read. I don't have to data architect. Nice thing about Hadoop is you don't have to worry about table spaces and indexes mostly, and these types of things. And you've got the flexibility that I don't need to define DDL and I could just write a document. Very easy. But when we spin back to the challenges slide, how do I understand what the data is used for, the intent of the data? All of those things require a data architect type discipline to define, yes, when we have customer ID, it should look like this. And it's typically of this type of metadata, string of 6 bytes or something. And so yeah, I think metadata impact is still a very meaningful topic for Hadoop technologies. So this picture is the information server engine. Folks are familiar with DataStage. This is the DataStage engine. It was came out of MIT 20 years ago. Has been invested in over that period of time. Massively scalable. Data partitions on the fly and data at rest. Had its own actually thing that looked like HDFS, not with storing data 3 times, but partitioning data at rest. And so we have been doing big data for a long time. There's a couple of use cases. I'll just stream through the most interesting one, I think, for this conversation. Was this data services company. They've got a cluster of information server, no Hadoop. Actually, they brought Hadoop in since, and so they're both running both platforms. 40 trillion records a month. Actually, 45 was the number they gave me. What I understand it to be about 2 petabytes of data on our data integration platform. And so, we've been doing big data for a long time with DataStage, with our native engine, and that's the kind of discipline we're bringing now into the Hadoop environment. So people would say, well, if I want to design it once, scale it anywhere, when do I make the choice of when to run it inside of Hadoop, when to run it inside the data warehouse, and when to run it into the data integration platform? So these are some of the best practices we're promoting. I had somebody else from IBM in the room. I don't see her now. But I think these slides are available. So I won't spend time talking about this. If folks want this, do folks know for sure that all the slides are available from the conference?
They have been in past years.
OK. I believe they will be too. If for some reason you don't get this one, email me directly at IBM. It's tcurcio, so very easy. Automated Mapreduce Job Generation. So what we do is we use the same tool in the same stages, and I'll pick on a couple of competitors. So let me pick on Talent a little bit. When they design their big data stuff, it's a separate set of stages. So if I actually ever want to run that workload someplace else, I have to redesign it. What we've done is we've been very specific to say, this thing that you design once, these stages can run anywhere, right? And so what we're trying to do is isolate from changes to the underlying engines that might be processing any particular workload. And so when you design it using our drag and drop, visual, et cetera, push it to Hadoop, you get all of the benefits of Mapreduce right now. And probably not going to have time to talk about future stuff with Yarn and such, but that's where it's heading, of course. This type of job that you would have 2 different HDFS files being joined together after a transformation, creating another HDFS file, which is your analytical result, maybe in this particular case. What you're getting is saving writing all of this, right? And has anybody tried writing data integration Mapreduce? I didn't ask that question before. OK. So hopefully everybody's already moving towards tools. But assuming that was 1,000 columns, all that logic actually you're writing is much, much, much larger. And so depending on the complexity of what these data sources are, this can get quite expensive. And I think this was probably a snippet of about 1/10 of the code you need to write for what we just graphically dropped on the canvas for 5 stages. So why is push down to VTL and Mapreduce not sufficient? So again, some workloads will never go into Hadoop, right? And so if we're talking about enterprise class data integration, there'll be a set that won't be Hadoop. The other reason it's not sufficient today is because Mapreduce is a hog and it's slow. Anybody agree with that? Anybody's experienced yet with that? OK, a couple. And some vendors actually chose to go, and I'll pick on another one that starts with an I, go through HBase. HBase is even more of a hog, right? It's more slow. And so ask very specific questions about the way your data integration vendor is going towards Hadoop. You really want somebody who's, we want Mapreduce because that was all that was available. You want really somebody who's going to run as a native application in Yarn, and that's where IBM is heading with this technology. And you also want to know that massively scalable integration doesn't just use partitioning, it uses a lot of pipelining features across a cluster. And again, that's where information server is a unique technology across any of the other vendors who are doing data integration on Hadoop today. World-class governance, 3 questions. Where does the data in my report come from? Right, a lot of people want to know that, again, and that's the kind of thing that's a regulatory requirement for particular industries. What is being done with it inside of Hadoop, right? If I am doing levels of transformation in Hadoop, do I have visibility to what's being done, how I'm calculating net revenue, right? Can I ensure the business user that we're actually doing those calculations correctly? And where was it before reaching our data lake? So we have this data lake, now I'm governing everything that's coming into my Hadoop environment. Where did that data come from? Did it originate in the place that I thought it should have to actually produce this type of report? And so all these are the primary questions for data governance around data integration. Of course, there's security, privacy of information that would extend the list of questions, but in data integration that are primary ones. And so what are some of the requirements? How do you tell your business users how they can understand the confidence in this data, the trustworthiness of it? Terminology, what does this mean? So what we have is a business glossary functionality. So I have something called social security number. I know authoritatively what that means. I can use it the same way across the organization, and I link that to all of the data stores where that data artifact, that semantic, exists. And so I can know exactly that, well, this report has this object. Is that, in this case, contract type code? Yes, it is, because I've linked that semantic term to the data assets. Or you're measuring the quality. So if you want to ensure that every time you have a social security number, it's 9 digits and it's all numeric, can you actually ensure that level of quality on your data in Hadoop just the way that we can on our enterprise data warehouse? Again, that's a key requirement for satisfying governance. And then finally, lineage, impact analysis, the visualization of how data is moving between different sources and targets, and the ability to drill down and see the details of how that happens. And depending on who your user is who's asking these sorts of questions, they'll ask different types of questions. Some may just want to know, did the data come from my vSAM 101 file? And so what we call that business lineage, right, the highest level. And others will want to get into the guts of what the rules are, the terminology, or the transformation requirements, et cetera. And that's where we want to be able to drill down to any level of detail about this transformation process to support that type of governance as well. There's another dimension. So that was business, technical, operational. 2 months ago, it was designed differently. Can I see actually how my lineage looked 2 months ago when I actually produced this record that I'm now getting sued about? So again, supporting that type of governance requirement too. And this is a very different topic than it was 2 years ago when Hadoop just came out. Governance really wasn't part and parcel of our conversation. People weren't asking those kind of questions. But again, it's the discipline we've had in IT for so many years. So governance lifecycle, again, some of them were data integration focused, some of them are privacy, security, et cetera. I think, again, we've got about 2 minutes left. I'm going to skip this for the sake of time. Key one that I'll just mention is collaboration, since we haven't talked about that yet, is when we have project teams looking to work together. Are they working in a shared environment? How do they lend understanding back to one another? Am I doing data profiling and I want to tell my developer that there's null values someplace so he can be aware? And how do I enrich my metadata understanding so he has that information available to him? This collaborative environment is part and parcel, again, of our information server technology and is part of any good data integration platform. Robust administration and operations, series of bullets, but boils down to, do I have visibility to what's running? Do I have visibility to the resources that are being consumed? If there's any bottlenecks in the platform, do I know where those are happening? And that could be, again, across the Hadoop infrastructure, across the data integration platform, or across the database infrastructure. I want to know those sorts of questions about all of them. And then administration, things like encrypting passwords and secure communication and easy to install and maintain, and et cetera. And so, again, you'd be surprised how many projects fail to consider the administration costs of getting a project up and running. And so a lot of things that we've invested in over time is tooling like these, visualizations of my operational environment, things that actually introspect. You talk about like a data integration center of excellence. Anybody here belong to a data integration center of excellence? Okay, a couple, yeah. And so one of the things that you do is you build best practices about how do I want my data integration platform to run? And some people will say, never run any one job that takes longer than 20 minutes. If it takes longer than 20 minutes, I lose my restartability level that I'd like. And so what you could do now is you can introspect all of this metadata about the operational environment to look for things that fall outside the boundaries. We have a bunch of accelerators that look at and introspect our operational metadata to tell you those things. customer that we've been partnering with. This particular customer, they said, we know Hadoop is evolving. We started this project with them 2 years ago. And we recognize we need data integration as part of our big data initiative. And so what they did was they coupled actually a grid of information server with our data integration, data quality metadata, alongside of Hadoop, with levels of integration running inside of our cluster as well as inside of the Hadoop cluster in order to achieve rebuilding really their whole IT stack for analytics. And so very successful. They've got actually now upward of 400 different data marts that are running on this platform. I was actually a little surprised by some of the speakers today that were just about to go to production. I thought actually we might see, because it's been, we've got a couple of good success stories like this, I thought we might see a little bit more of those success stories today. A few more that we've been working with, some who are evolving, some who are implemented. Oh, who's the most interesting one here? Yeah, probably the insurance company, because we really haven't talked about semi-structured, unstructured, but looking for actually things that were of interest within large XML documents, particularly personally identifiable information and names and addresses and these types of things. And how can I ferret those things out and so I could actually protect it and secure it? And so that was one of the things that they were looking to do as part of their big data initiative, kind of branching into that semi-structured space, and some text analytics as part of that. So I will just, again, for sake of time, we are up. Benefits of a data integration platform. Promote reuse, get away from expensive hand coding, promote good governance. So I know, and anybody can know what's actually happening in the data integration platform. And so I will release folks. If there's any questions, maybe I could just entertain 1 or 2 questions real quick. All right, I know I'm...
needed to run this? How many of them and what types? So you talk about the tools, but who do we hire for that? Should it be DBAs that have domain expertise and knowledge of it?
Just because most people are leaving. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And again, I'll be here for a few minutes. Feel free to come on up. Yep, thank you.